The Legend of Zelda is one of gaming's most beloved and storied franchises. From a revolutionary beginning on the NES to its transition to a 3D adventure series, now returning to its open-world, open-ended roots with Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. The series has seen rough patches here and there, but lately it feels as if it's never been bigger or more influential, especially for Nintendo. From incredible remasters and remakes, such as Skyward Sword and Link's Awakening, to brand new adventures with Breath of the Wild, Hyrule Warriors, Age of Calamity, and Tears of the Kingdom, The Legend of Zelda is seemingly relying on every era to cement itself in the modern video game scene. But why is that? Why has Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom been so successful for a franchise known for its successes? What is it about The Legend of Zelda itself that may lend itself to its new direction, even in the face of some very worthy critiques about various components of its formula? Well, strap in, buckle up, grab a snack, sit back, relax, as we talk about one of my favorite gaming franchises of all time, The Legend of Zelda. Now, I have recently beaten Tears of the Kingdom. I did quite a bit. I maxed out stamina, I have around 23, 24 hearts. I farmed so many Lionels that I lost count. No, legit, I had them marked on the map as to where they spawned. And whenever I saw a blood moon, I knew it was on. I rebuilt villages, helped a mayor to get elected, delved into Hyrule's past, and put down Ganondorf possibly once and for all. Tears of the Kingdom is filled to the brim with varied content and experiences that lend themselves to the formula of Breath and Tears of the Kingdom. But peruse any internet forum or comment section about this game or franchise, and you're bound to find some take one way or the other that Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom aren't Zelda games, because they stray too much and too significantly from the 3D Zelda formula. Well, that's the funny thing, because in my opinion, Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom emulate the original experience of The Legend of Zelda on the NES. A game that became famous and broke into the mainstream because of its open-ended aspects. It dropped you into this open world of Hyrule on the NES of all things, and barely gave you any direction, just allowed you to pick a direction and to pursue the journey at your own pace. Find what secrets you may uncover. And when you play that Legend of Zelda on the NES, you don't even have to finish it. Like, you play 15 minutes of it. You can already tell how different it feels from its other 2D counterparts and the 3D games as well. But to me, when I went back to start playing it a few months back, it felt so similar to Breath of the Wild, at least in terms of its inspiration and just the overall vibe that it's going for. Only real difference between the NES Zelda and Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom is that those later games have more technology to work with, so they're able to really delve into the experience. But the adventure, that feeling of wanderlust, is baked into the very core of this franchise. Whether it's the 2D elements or the 3D elements, it's something inherently Zelda because, in my opinion, the Zelda components about what makes a Zelda game are very flexible in nature. It's an adventure puzzle game at the end of the day for me, as well as an action game. 3 genres that you can really delve into because the aspects of those genres that feel Zelda are very broad. Take the puzzles, for instance. What makes a Zelda dungeon or a Zelda puzzle feel like a Zelda puzzle? Well, you unlock various doors or whatnot, or activate switches to proceed further into the dungeon or to proceed to a boss chamber. Okay, pretty basic. But what is it about the puzzles themselves, maybe? Well, you unlock some new piece of kit. Whether it's the hook shot, the shovel, bombs, hammer, running shoes, whatever it is, you unlock some new piece of kit. The freaking golden beetle from Skyward Sword. You unlock some kind of piece of kit that enables you to tackle a new type of puzzle that you couldn't access before, or that you couldn't solve before, but all of a sudden, a new type of puzzle is presented to the player. So now you have to tackle those challenges alongside older styles of puzzles and figure out which tool is needed for the job. And you may be saying, Jmulls, that's very basic and very open-ended and vague. And yeah, it's kind of like that by design. It's a foundation upon which the series can be birthed and iterated on and innovated on. Because that formula of puzzle works in the 2D realm with games like Link to the Past or Link's Awakening, A Link Between Worlds. It works in that style of game, and it also works in the 3D era like Twilight Princess, Skyward Sword, and yes, even Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. It's all about identifying the type of puzzle that it is, and then using the appropriate tool in the appropriate way to solve said puzzle. Very basic, but it feels Zelda. And because that very recognizable component of the formula is so vague and open-ended, it can be applied in myriad different ways to better fit in whatever new game they want to create, or new experience that they want to create. Take Breath of the Wild, for instance. In other Zelda games, normally the pattern would be that you would slowly unlock a bunch of tools over the course of the game that you could then retrofit into new puzzles to solve them and move on. However, in Breath of the Wild, they took a little bit of a detour with that. They gave you your 4 Sheikah Slate abilities off the bat from the introduction, and it was up to you to identify what tool or what combination of tools you needed to utilize or could utilize to solve the puzzle. So while the pacing was different, the style of puzzle felt familiar. And sure, I don't think Breath of the Wild or Tears of the Kingdom have the best dungeons or the best puzzles in the series. I don't. I think they don't have by a long shot. But by merely having that type of puzzle and that formula, it makes the game feel like a Legend of Zelda game. At least to me. We all think differently, and we're all going to react to these aspects of the series differently. I can only give you my perspective and my opinion. What about story? Well, The Legend of Zelda's always had a pretty basic storyline. Link the protagonist, Zelda the princess who varies in importance from game to game, and then you have the big bad Ganondorf, or whatever other villain they may want to use for that game. Most of the time it's Ganon or Ganondorf though. Get the Master Sword, save the princess, defeat Ganondorf or Ganon or whatever, job done. Very basic blueprint or outline for a narrative. However, again, that vagueness, that open-endedness, is one of Zelda's most dominant features, because it can be applied in so many different applications. Stories with varying levels of interest, or engagement, or complexity. And sure, not every Zelda game follows that formula, Link's Awakening for instance, but when one aspect of the formula may not be as present as the others, those other aspects of the Zelda formula and what you think of a Zelda game can be put on a higher pedestal to still make the game feel like a Legend of Zelda. There's always just a certain mood that the Legend of Zelda is able to put me in. It's able to spark that feeling of adventure that few other games are able to grasp on such a foundational level like this series. Breath of the Wild was one of the best implementations of that feeling in a video game that I've ever experienced. A game that relied on its nature, its aesthetics, and its overall vibe, and built around that. Leaning a little bit more into the story than many of the other previous games, upping the characterization of Zelda herself, while once again relying on different aspects of the formula to still make it feel like a Legend of Zelda game for me. But if you're unfamiliar with those aspects of the Legend of Zelda, then I can understand how it may not feel like a Zelda game. And then you have Tears of the Kingdom, and it's like, okay, how do we differentiate this game? Well, we can lean on different aspects of the formula. That open-ended sense of adventure and wanderlust, walking through a beautiful world filled with ancient technology, that worked very well for one game. However, what if we went into a slightly different direction to give Tears of the Kingdom its own identity? What if we added the sky and the depths? What if we enabled you to build a phantom party surrounding you? What if we upped the epic feeling of the game overall and really leaned on having multiple different aesthetics? Like the color-saturated realm of the sky. We can find locations of low gravity to solve different kinds of puzzles. Go on the surface and it's feel so different to how it was in Breath of the Wild because the tools available to the player, again, tools, and the kit you have at your disposal can vary up a Zelda experience greatly from one game to the other. And that's no different going from Breath of the Wild to Tears of the Kingdom. You had fundamentally different tools at your disposal which made you tackle various sections, both familiar and now different to you, in completely unique ways. And you had the depths that relied more on Zelda's darker aesthetics and themes and messaging to try and create an atmosphere that felt suffocating. You're always surrounded by this pitch blackness. A proverbial curtain surrounding yourself, unable to gaze into the abyss, except for finding the odd light route to grant you a little bit of light in that hopeless, darkless cave. All the while, you desperately threw light seeds all over the place just for a little bit of light. And it operated differently, it played differently, because that sense of variety and experiences, coupled with many aspects of the Zelda's formula, open-endedness, that is the strength of Zelda, because it can be applied in so many different ways to create completely different experiences that still feel like Legend of Zelda. That's why the 2D era, or the 2D style of Zelda, has its own unique flair and identity to it, but it still feels like Zelda. Same thing with the 3D games. They feel different as well. They have their own vibe and style of game. They're constructed differently. However, those same running threads connect those games to the 2D era. Same with the NES and these later Zelda games like Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. They may play very different to one another, but those connecting threads remain the same. And sure, they may have a different coat of paint, a different tint or hue to them, and they may be woven into the fabric of the Zelda game in different styles and different ways to create unique experiences that are able to feel fresh and new, to create a franchise that seemingly never ages, because it's able to keep up with the times. It's able to keep up with the recent styles of games that are popular, but are able to carve their own niche into the landscape of the modern games industry that so many other franchises and games of old desperately try to. They try and claw themselves, dig and scrape an identity in the modern games industry, one that is so fundamentally different from the scenes and eras of old. But Zelda's able to squeeze in perfectly and feel like it's never belonged to anywhere else, because its formula is so open-ended, and it's headed up by people who are passionate about the project, who are able and willing to take risks, to try new things, and who refuse to allow the Legend of Zelda to become just a legend. That's how we're able to get mechanics like Fuse or Ultra Hand or Rewind or Ascend. They're willing to keep trying to be better. Game after game, they try and be better. They may not always succeed, but they definitely try. And I think that comes through with the games themselves. They won't be for everybody. Not every Zelda game will be. But there's a reason The Legend of Zelda helped to pave gaming's way all those years ago, and why it's still on the path today, carving new roads and paving for so many other games to come. It's why a game like The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom can have so many critiques and issues levied at it. Like, in my opinion, I'm not a big fan of the dungeon design, which is a core pinnacle of a 3D Zelda game, even the 2D Zelda game. I think some of the bosses were a bit derivative and one-dimensional, and I think the story itself over-relies on memories and utilizing flashbacks to really convey an overarching story and narrative. I think they over-rely on that. However, how many franchises out there could you level those significant critiques at, and it can still walk away saying this is one of the best games of the year? What more can be said other than that? A game so well-crafted, imaginative, and innovative that I can level critiques at its main pillars of gameplay and story, and still walk away wanting more, wanting to play again, wanting to see what the future holds, and loving nearly every minute that I spent in The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. And that is why I think The Legend of Zelda is such a dominating force in the video games industry. A proverbial beacon that many other franchises and games and studios look to for inspiration. I've played Zelda for many years, and I plan to play them for many years to come, because these games, in my opinion, do not age. Okay, well, look, the Game Boy games may have aged a bit, but they're still good. There's a reason we got a Link's Awakening remake, because the core of what's there is still good and people still want that. There's many different flavors of The Legend of Zelda. I think that's one of the beautiful aspects of it. So I'm gonna call the video there for the day. Thank you all for tuning in. My pleasure for making the video. If you enjoyed it, please leave a like and subscribe. It really helps the channel out and helps support future content, and I greatly appreciate it. Stay safe, have a great day, go play some video games if you can, and as always, I'll see you all next time. Bye bye everybody, until we meet again.